History meeting the future. Ronald Reagan entered the 1980 presidential race as a Washington outsider. He managed to win over many skeptics, shedding his Hollywood image to go on to defeat Jimmy Carter in a landslide. So, what are the lessons Donald Trump maybe could take away from Reagan's strategies as that outsider? What do you guys think?
Well, as somebody who was working for a Teddy Kennedy delegate in 1980, none of us took Ronald Reagan seriously. We saw him the way Trump is seen now, as an extremist, no experience, couldn't be elected. He then got into a debate with Jimmy Carter. Pat knows better than anybody. He looked reasonable, rational, responsible. The rest, as they say, is history.
One of the things that I don't remember reading about that Ronald Reagan had to face were these protesters. And T.M. Freeman writes on Twitter, how do the Fox News insiders feel about the protester behavior and the blame game for that behavior?
Well, I'll do that because then we need to hear Pat a little bit on Reagan. The protesters are disgraceful, and I think they're almost helping Trump. I think they help him among his base for sure. I don't know where it's going to go among independents and the votes he doesn't yet have. It's an issue, and
yeah,
it's going to get worse, by the way.
Because what I see on Twitter and other places in social media is stop calling them anti-Trump. I mean, some of these people are violent, they're breaking the law. Wouldn't you have another word like potential criminal?
I was with him when, you know, people waving Mexican flags, burning American flags, and causing violence disrupts, makes a lot of people unhappy. But remember what we have here. And Trump touched on this, and it was important. And I want to go back to the Reagan thing in the context of that, which is Reagan's problem was we had nailed him as too risky. But the flow of events were so much against us that is when, as you said, he got on the debate, which I pleaded with not to do. There's a lot of history there. Reagan had some rough days in 1980. Made a lot of mistakes, but learned from him. His team did. He lost his temper in the primaries. There are many things that could be learned from this. The most important is when you have the problem. Can you use your big issues, which will work for you, or is it going to be risk and personality? Much bigger issues now. But let me say this about the rioting. After a while, you know, people will not like it on one end, but do they want a president rioting? But I want to tell you what he was right about, which is assaulting the press, which has been, this week, is outrageous, and he should take them on because of what the New York Times writes a piece about rule of law, and they're all talking about this, while Obama has shredded the Constitution from end to end, which nobody cares about. When you have him, the front page of these papers being nothing but propaganda sheets for the Democratic nominee, whether that's Bernie Sanders or Trump, and then when you know, so many for Hillary. I mean,
what Trump lacks now is a coherent narrative.
Right.
He lacks a message, and until he gets an anti-Hillary, pro-Trump message. One other quick point, if I could: 38,000 new jobs created.
Right.
Tepid report. That is the issue, and the issue of corruption. He needs that thematically. If he does those things, and he explains and still last as the anti-systemic candidate in a year when the people want to throw them all out, and her particularly, that is the way to victory. But these things of being angry personally, taking every slight is something you must attack.
This attack on the federal judge is a disaster, and I would say Hillary won the week of the three of them.
And she should have been slaughtered.
That speech shaped her whole campaign against Trump. He's psychologically not capable.
Going forward, something from Ronald Reagan that you would quickly say to Donald Trump.
The tone of Reagan is what made him last.
But remember, let's get into something else that mattered too, though, is he had John Anderson, who had run against him, running as a basic quasi-Democrat, even though he was a Republican, sucking off votes from Jimmy Carter. People talk about these splinter votes.
Optimism.
Yes,
Optimism.
the future.
Interesting.
He was optimistic.
All right.